October 10, 2024. 6:15 p.m. Mayfair, London. Two wealthy-looking tourists stroll through one of the world's most expensive neighborhoods. The man's wearing a £40,000 Rolex Skydweller. The woman flashes a £70,000 Patek Philippe rose gold. They look like perfect targets. Behind them, a predator stalks. 21-year-old Yakob Harket has chosen his victims. He's part of an international crime network that's terrorized London's elite districts for years. What he doesn't know is that he's about to make the biggest mistake of his criminal career. Because these aren't tourists. They're undercover police officers. And in the next 60 seconds, this botched robbery will expose a billion-dollar international crime network that stretches from North Africa to the heart of London's financial district. You're about to witness the most audacious police sting operation in modern British history. But this story goes deeper than you think. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Mayfair now has the highest rate of watch robberies in Europe, and how one mistake by a street criminal unraveled an entire international conspiracy. But before we dive into that explosive moment, you need to understand what led to this point. Because this isn't just about two criminals trying to steal watches. This is about how London became ground zero for the most sophisticated luxury theft operation the world has ever seen. Let me paint you a picture of modern London that the tourist brochures don't show you. In the last 7 years, watch thefts in England and Wales have nearly doubled to over 11,000 per year. In London alone, 6,000 watches were stolen last year. That's more than 16 every single day. And if these numbers are blowing your mind, wait until you hear what comes next. If you're getting the same chills I got when I first researched this case, smash that like button to let me know you want more deep dives into cases that expose the hidden criminal underworld operating right under our noses. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. International business executives, people who fly around the world closing million-dollar deals, have started avoiding London. Not because of terrorism. Not because of economic instability. Because they're terrified of having their watches ripped off their wrists in broad daylight. The method is always the same. Victims are targeted for their expensive timepieces. The criminals use violence, intimidation, and speed. They strike in seconds, disappear into crowds, and by the time victims realize what's happened, the thieves are gone. But what police didn't realize until recently was that these weren't random crimes. They were part of something much bigger. Something that would require the most elaborate undercover operation in Metropolitan Police history to expose. The story really begins thousands of miles away, in North Africa. Specifically, Algeria. What investigators discovered was a pipeline, a criminal highway that ran from Algerian cities, through France, and directly into the heart of London's wealthiest districts. These weren't desperate street criminals looking for quick cash. These were organized professionals who studied their craft. They researched luxury watch models online. They scouted locations. They identified the perfect hunting grounds, Mayfair, Knightsbridge, Soho, areas where wealthy people casually display million-dollar accessories. Detective Sergeant Andy Swindles, who leads the Met's luxury theft unit, described it as stealing to order. These criminals weren't grabbing random watches. They were targeting specific models. Richard Mille, Patek Philippe, Rolex Daytona. Watches that could be immediately moved through international networks. And the numbers are staggering. A single Richard Mille can be worth £300,000. A rare Patek Philippe? £500,000 or more. In one successful day, a skilled thief could steal more than most people earn in a lifetime. But here's what made this network so dangerous. They weren't just stealing watches. They were stealing confidence. They were making London's most prestigious neighborhoods feel unsafe. They were targeting the very people who drive London's economy. And by late 2024, the situation had reached a breaking point. The Met realized they needed to do something unprecedented. They needed to become the bait. The operation that would change everything began months before October 10th. The Metropolitan Police had been running undercover operations in central London for over a year, but this was different. This was personal. 2 officers, whose identities are still protected, were selected for the most dangerous assignment imaginable. They would pose as wealthy tourists, wear genuine luxury watches worth more than most people's houses, and walk through the most dangerous areas of London. Think about that for a moment. These officers were essentially wearing targets on their wrists. They were making themselves the most attractive robbery victims in London, hoping that criminals would be stupid enough to try. The male officer wore a genuine £40,000 Rolex Skydweller. The female officer wore a replica Patek Philippe rose gold, but one so convincing that it would be worth £70,000 if real. Together, they were walking around with what appeared to be £110,000 worth of watches. But they weren't alone. Hidden throughout Mayfair were backup officers, surveillance teams, and cameras capturing every angle. This wasn't just a sting operation. It was a carefully orchestrated trap designed to catch the Rolex rippers in the act. Now, before I show you exactly what happened when these criminals took the bait, take a second to appreciate the incredible courage of these officers. If this level of dedication from law enforcement impresses you as much as it impresses me, show this video some love by hitting that like button and sharing it with someone who respects what our police do to keep us safe. For hours, nothing happened. The officers walked their route from Berkeley Square to Hayes Mews, over and over. They made themselves visible, vulnerable, attractive to criminals. And then, at 6:15 p.m., they got exactly what they were looking for. Yakob Harket, 21 years old, had been watching them. He'd followed them for several minutes, studying their movements, waiting for the perfect moment. He had no idea that he was walking into the most sophisticated police trap in British history. What you're about to see is the moment when months of planning, thousands of pounds in equipment, and incredible police work all came together in a few seconds of pure chaos. This is it. This is the moment everything changed. Watch carefully, because what happens next will shock you. Harket approaches from behind. He's casual, trying to blend in. But the cameras catch everything. You can see him focusing on the female officer's wrist, where the Patek Philippe is clearly visible. And then he strikes. In one fluid motion, he grabs the watch and tries to rip it from her wrist. But something goes wrong. The watch doesn't come off easily. There's a struggle. You can hear the moment of realization. The officers don't react like victims. They react like police. And suddenly, Harket knows he's made a catastrophic mistake. The chase begins immediately. But this isn't 2 random tourists pursuing a thief. This is a coordinated police operation snapping into action. The backup officers converge from multiple directions. There's nowhere to run. Watch how professional this takedown is. The officers don't just tackle Harket. They secure the area, identify additional suspects, and maintain control of the situation. This is the result of months of training and preparation. Within minutes, Harket is on the ground, in custody. The replica Patek Philippe, which he managed to grab but dropped during the chase, is recovered. But the real prize isn't the watch. It's what happens next. Because as the officers secure Harket, they notice something else. 3 other men who had been following the tourists are now trying to disappear into the crowd. The operation has just exposed an entire criminal team. Mohammed Nos, 34, is arrested immediately. But Adel Mohamdi, 31, and Yanis Amri, 37, managed to escape. They'll be convicted in absentia, but they are still wanted by police today. And then investigators make a discovery that changes everything. This wasn't just a random robbery attempt. This was part of something much bigger. In the hours and days following the arrests, detectives began piecing together a puzzle that would reveal the true scope of the Rolex Ripper network. What they found was both fascinating and terrifying. Mohammed Nos's phone revealed something crucial. The day before the robbery, he had been researching luxury watch models online. Specifically, Richard Mille timepieces, some of the most expensive watches in the world. This wasn't opportunistic crime. This was professional preparation. But the investigation went deeper. Through international cooperation, police traced connections between the London suspects and criminal networks in Algeria. They discovered that this wasn't an isolated operation. It was part of a systematic infiltration of London's luxury districts. The numbers were staggering. Investigators estimated that the broader network was responsible for millions of pounds in thefts. But more importantly, they realized that London had become the primary target for an international criminal enterprise. The human cost was equally devastating. Victims described being traumatized, afraid to wear their watches in public, afraid to walk through areas they had considered safe their entire lives. The psychological impact was immense. But here's where the story gets truly remarkable. Through cooperation with French authorities, police discovered that the same criminals were operating across multiple countries. The network wasn't just targeting London. It was targeting every major European city with significant wealth. This was organized crime at its most sophisticated. The criminals had studied their targets, understood the legal systems, and developed strategies to exploit weaknesses in international law enforcement cooperation. And that's when police realized something chilling. The operation they had just disrupted was probably just the tip of the iceberg. If this international conspiracy is as mind-blowing to you as it was to me when I first uncovered it, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Scene Chronicles and hit that notification bell. We're the only channel diving this deep into the criminal networks that most people never hear about. And trust me, what's coming next in this story will change everything you thought you knew about how modern crime really works. The trial of Yakob Harket and Mohammed Nos began months later at Southwark Crown Court. What emerged during the proceedings painted a picture of calculated criminal enterprise that shocked even experienced prosecutors. Harket, perhaps realizing the strength of the evidence against him, pleaded guilty to robbery. The CCTV footage was undeniable. His attack on the undercover officers was captured from multiple angles. There was no point in fighting it. But Nos chose to fight. He claimed he wasn't part of the robbery, that he just happened to be in the area. The jury didn't buy it. After reviewing the evidence, including the phone searches and surveillance footage, they found him guilty. Recorder Jacques Algazi KC delivered sentences that sent a clear message. Harket received 2 years in prison, reduced because of his guilty plea. Nos received 3 years. Combined, 5 years behind bars. But it was the judge's comments that really captured the significance of the case. He described it as highly organized crime involving stealing to order and emphasized that it was motivated by greed, not need. The 2 suspects who escaped, Mohamdi and Amri, were convicted in their absence. Warrants remain active for their arrest. They're still wanted by police today. But the real victory wasn't just the convictions. It was the message sent to criminal networks worldwide. London's police were no longer passive victims of organized crime. They were fighting back. So what does this case tell us about crime, policing, and security in modern London? The implications are both encouraging and deeply concerning. On the positive side, this operation demonstrated that innovative policing can work. The Met's willingness to use undercover operations, international cooperation, and targeted enforcement shows that law enforcement can adapt to new criminal threats. But the challenges remain enormous. The Rolex Ripper network is still active. International criminals continue to view London as a target-rich environment. And the fundamental problem, the display of wealth in public spaces, hasn't been solved. The economic implications are staggering. London's reputation as a safe destination for wealthy visitors has been damaged. The psychological impact on residents and businesses is real. And the cost of enhanced security measures is significant. Perhaps most concerning is what this case reveals about the future of crime. These weren't traditional criminals. They were organized, international, and sophisticated. They studied their targets, planned their operations, and exploited weaknesses in law enforcement cooperation. And they are evolving. Social media provides new ways to identify targets. Encrypted communications make coordination easier. International travel allows criminals to strike and disappear across borders. The Rolex Ripper case was a victory for police, but it was also a warning. It showed that modern criminal networks are more sophisticated, more international, and more dangerous than ever before. Here's something that might surprise you. If you've made it this far in the video, you're part of the 12% of viewers who actually watch until the end. That tells me you're genuinely interested in understanding how these criminal networks really operate. Share this video with someone else who needs to know the truth about what's happening in our cities. The more people who understand these threats, the better we can protect ourselves and our communities. So here's what we learned from the day criminals tried to rob undercover cops in Mayfair. We learned that London is under attack by international criminal networks. We learned that luxury theft has become a billion-dollar industry. And we learned that fighting back requires innovation, cooperation, and courage. But most importantly, we learned that sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places. Two police officers, wearing target-expensive watches, walking through dangerous streets, waiting for criminals to make a mistake. Yakob Harket and Mohammed Nos thought they were robbing tourists. Instead, they exposed an international criminal conspiracy and handed police their biggest victory in the war against luxury theft. The Rolex Rippers are still out there. The network is still active. But now police know what they are dealing with. And criminals know that in London, their next victim might just be wearing a badge. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Scene Chronicles for more deep dives into the world's most incredible criminal cases. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when we expose the truth behind the headlines. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous criminals are the ones who think they're the smartest people in the room. I'm your host at Crime Scene Chronicles, and I'll see you in the next case. Just be wearing a badge. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most incredible criminal cases. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous criminals are the ones who think they're the smartest people in the room.